In August of 2019, the four-woman singing group Mamamoo held a concert in which each member had a solo segment. Hwasa's segment was a theatrical retelling of her life story. She talked about her struggles as well as her triumphs. Her early struggles with weight, rejection within the K-pop industry, even more personal struggles like grief and loneliness. One moment from that concert went viral and sparked a shift in her public perception, from pop star to social icon.
어느 날은 오디션을 보러 이렇게 갔는데 거기 선생님께서 그러시더라고요. 너는 개성도 강하고 노래도 잘하지만서도 뚱뚱하고 예쁘지가 않아. 그래서 밤새도록 울면서 주구장창 그 영상을 돌려보다가 어느새 저는 이런 다짐을 했죠. 이 시대가 말하는 미의 기준에 내가 맞지 않다면 내가 또 다른 기준이 되어야겠다.
The confident mentality she demonstrated in that story became an inspiration for many people who felt rejected and looked down on in their society. This was the story of how she went from country girl to international star. The story of how she became Hwasa.
이름하여 Hwasa.
As usual, it took me longer than I expected to finish this video. Why, you ask? I'm finding that I don't actually know where video is going, even though I'm the one making it. Though I do insert my theories and opinions, more than anything, I want my analysis of an artist to be research-based and objective. But this means that as I analyze lyrics, watch interviews, and study other sources, I have to go where the evidence takes me, even if it takes me somewhere I wasn't expecting. With this episode, I was expecting to talk about why Hwasa has become an icon of self-acceptance and a source of inspiration for so many people in Korea and abroad. I expected to talk about how her hit song, Maria, was written as a way for her to comfort herself after being subjected to the judgments and criticisms of others. And I will talk about those things, but I now realize that this episode is also about stories. First, it's about the drive that artists have to understand their own life story and share it with the world. It's also about the way that another person's story can give us the space to consider our own lives from a wider perspective. I called this episode The Story of Maria because rather than a comprehensive breakdown of the lyrics and music video, I want to talk about why she created a new persona for this project. And luckily for me, this is a topic that Hwasa has been pretty vocal about. In the first episode, I said that the artist known as Hwasa is a woman of many faces, many personas. We've met Anhejin, we've met Hwasa, and now it's time to meet two new personas, the Marias. Good Maria and Evil Maria. I will explain how Hwasa uses these two personas as characters to tell her own story of her battle between good and evil, a battle that takes place in her mind. For many of us, our first introduction to stories was in the form of fairy tales. In most of these stories, good triumphs over evil. The evil witch is defeated. The poor, sweet girl becomes royalty. Who doesn't love a great fairy tale? I think that's why Hwasa's viral moment was so compelling. Her rise to stardom has been like a fairy tale.
어느새 저는 이런 다짐을 했죠. 이 시대가 말하는 미의 기준에 내가 맞지 않다면 내가 또 다른 기준이 되어야겠다.
Cinderella has an interesting role in Hwasa's journey.
저는 이제 마마무에 속해 있는 화사라고 하고요.
Her very first stage appearance was in a production of the traditional Korean story Kongji Patji, a tale that is similar to the Western Cinderella story.
하다가 초등학교 때 어쩌다가 캐스팅돼서 뮤지컬에 이제 그게 제 정말 처음 무대 그런 경력인데 뮤지컬 이제 콩지
But Hwasa didn't get the role of Cinderella.
규모가 큰
She was cast as the evil stepsister
파치
instead.
역할을 맡았어요. 네. 콩지는 죽어도 안 주시더라고요. 근데 이제
But the
파치 역할을
pride she
맡았는데
felt in performing on that stage stuck with her,
분들께서 막
and she decided then that she would be a singer.
노래만
And sing she did. Months of auditions became years of training and eventually a life of singing, performing, and traveling the world to meet fans who were awed by her talents and inspired by her story. It seemed that her dreams really did come true. But life is not a dream. With real life, there's always more to the story. It seemed that Hwasa had finally attained the praise and approval of the very industry that had rejected her when she was a child. But criticism of her appearance did not go away because of her success. Instead, it just got louder. A bigger stage means a bigger audience, and unfortunately, more eyes inevitably means more criticism. There is a lot to unpack when discussing the ways that her looks, body, fashion, and behavior has been judged in her country. First, we have to understand the rigidity of Korean beauty standards. There are rules to being pretty, and they are very strict. There are expectations for everything from the size and shape of your nose to the plumpness of your lips to the color of your skin. You need to be very, very skinny, have tall height, large eyes, V-shaped jawline, straight eyebrows, and of course, a girly personality. And while I'm focusing on the beauty standards for women, it's honestly not easier for men. It seems just as strict and difficult to attain. As you can imagine, most of the celebrities in the South Korean entertainment industry fit or at least come close to the standard, and those who don't often endure intense bullying and criticism from social media trolls and even major media publications. Female K-pop stars, unsurprisingly, tend to fit the mold, but Hwasa does not. She's more tan than pale, more curvy than skinny, and her facial features, while beautiful, do not match many of the Korean beauty standards. But it seemed that the more they criticized her body, the more she showed it off. She seems determined to not be swayed by public pressure. And of course, her controversial attire became more fuel for the fire of her critics.
근데 이런 시선이 있더라고요. 아, 쟤는 벗어서 뜨고 싶구나. 그런 댓글들이 기분 나쁘기보다는 아리송했었던 것 같아요. 그냥 아니니까. 그냥 아닌데? 저는 데뷔 전부터 그랬어요. 저는 데뷔 때부터도 이 손톱을 항상 붙여왔고.
그렇죠.
네, 전 그냥 하던 대로 해왔을
맞아요.
뿐인데 그냥 하면서 기다리다가 어느 순간 그냥 그게 조금 그렇게 보여진 것 같아요.
Which brings me to the next thing that must be considered when unpacking the judgment she's been subject to by her society. Her fashion. I don't think I can talk about Hwasa without talking about fashion. The discussion her style generates among fans, the media, and even industry professionals proves it to be a significant feature of her public persona. Whether it's the red carpet, the stage, or the airport, her fashion choices often become an issue. She actually made headlines for going to the airport in a t-shirt and no bra. It's not shocking to see celebrity fashion being discussed on social media by fans and haters. But in this instance, major media outlets joined in the fray.
생각이 들고 뭐 계속 이제 같은 얘기 나왔는데 뭐 화사 씨 같은 경우에는 뭐 공항에서 또 속옷 안 입은 장면으로 또 화제도 모았고 그랬는데
이런 건 아니고요.
네. 좀 이렇게 뭐 다른 걸그룹들이랑 다른 이런 뭐 당당한 모습을 보여주는 게 이렇게 멤버들이 좀 성장하면서 의도적으로 좀 주체적인 모습을 보여주려고 그런 건지 아니면 의도하진 않았는데 이제 남들이 우리를 좀 당당하다 이렇게 보는 건지 좀 궁금해요.
네, 화사 씨가 답 주시겠어요?
근데 사실은 이게 그런 걸 의식하고 하는 게 오히려 더 뭔가 가식적인 게 티가 나고 이렇잖아요. 그냥 그런 거는 그냥 자연스럽게 그냥 편하게 했던 것 같아요. 뭔가를 제가 막 노리고 막 이런 것도 아니고 정말 편하게 생각을 했던 것 같아요. 그래서 이게 제가 너무 편하게 생각한 나머지 좀 거기에 대해서 좀 뭔가 불편하게 생각하신 분들도 계셨고 오히려 또 좋은 시선으로 바라봐 주신 분들이 계셨잖아요. 근데 저는 그냥 그 두 분의 다 의견들이 다 너무 감사하더라고요. 그래서 내가 좀 잊고 있었던 부분들에 대해서 다시 경각심을 얻게 되고 그리고 또 하나는 그래도 좀 내가 좀 편하게 하고 해도 많은 분들이 다 막 이거 아니야 이러지는 않구나 라는 그런 따뜻함을 느꼈습니다.
네. 답이 되셨죠. 그러니까 진짜 그냥 자연스러우면서 오는 당당함이기 때문에 아까 얘기했지만 설득력이 있다는 생각이 들어요. 슬라 씨.
그리고 당당함이라는 게 이제 뭐 다른 사람이 뭐 쟤는 당당해 이렇게 보는 게 아니라 내 자신이 그냥 말 안 해도 당당하게 행동을 하고 생각을 그렇게 하면은 그냥 자연스럽게 다른 사람들이 쟤는 되게 당당한 애구나 이렇게 봐주시는 것 같아요. 근데 저희도 다 스스로 당당하게 행동을 하고 뭐 잘못한 일이 아니면은 다 되게 즐겁게 하고 그 모습이 또 당당해 보이고 그래서 많은 분들이 또 당당하게 봐주시고 이렇게 된 것 같아요.
In the face of people's judgments, she projected unwavering confidence. But behind the face we show to the world, there's always a shadow. While she showed confidence on the outside, it seems she was hiding feelings of hurt and insecurity. And as those feelings grew in the darkest corners of her mind, she reached a point where she couldn't ignore them any longer. In the 2021 documentary, Mamamoo, Where Are We Now?, she spoke candidly about how she'd even considered ending her own life.
불행하다고 생각했어요. 그래서 내가 죽으면 그냥 이 상황이 끝날까까지 갔어요. 안녕 세상아, 나는 간다. 어우 차가워. 와. 아이. 저는 그 누구보다도 좀 예를 들어서 막 제 본업이 가수인데 막 사업도 하고 싶고 뭐도 하고 싶고 이런 성격이 아니에요. 음악으로 그냥 팬들한테 보답하고 함께 소통하고 저한테는 이게 다거든요. 이거 알죠? 제일 짜증나는 거. 근데 그게 다인 나에게 음악이 하기 싫어질 정도. 그게 다인 저에게 하기 싫은 정도까지 갔더라고요.
Instead, she poured her pain into her craft and wrote a song to encourage herself. The song that would become her biggest hit to date, Maria.
들으면서 마리아라는 곡도 사실은 막 들으면서 그냥 마리아 이럴 때도 그게 그 뜻을 담는지는 몰랐어. 그냥 요즘 친구들이 얘기하는 그냥 흥에 있는 그런 가사겠거니 하고 생각했다가 자세히 이제 그 내용을 보고서 야 이렇게 아픈 이야기 이야기를 이렇게 굉장히
아무렇지도 않게.
아무렇지도 않게 내뱉는 것이 지금 20대들의 표현 방법이구나 그러면서 굉장히 많이 또 얻어진 게 있어.
쿨하지.
너무 좋았어. 맵다 눈물.
네.
외로워서 어떻게 미움마저 삼켰어 화낼 힘도 없어 이유도 없고 Yeah Maria 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 빛나는 밤이야 날 괴롭히지 마 Maria 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 뭐하러 아동바동해 이미 여름동네
뭐 좀 노출을 했다고 아니면 화장이 좀 다른 사람보다 진하다고 그런 것만으로 제가 나쁜 사람으로 치부를 하고 이 사람들은 내가 그냥 울었으면 좋겠나? 아팠으면 좋겠나? 하는 마음에 그래 이거 눈물 줄 테니까 그냥 뭐 이런 식으로 그때 이제 막 되게 이제 막 힘듦에 차 있을 때 딱 듣고 그냥 바로 쏙쏙쏙쏙 나오더라고요. 네, 그냥 제 감정이. 막 멜로디랑 가사가 그냥 술술술술 나오더라고요. 그래서 마리아가 또 제 세례명이어가지고
중의적인 의미가
네,
있었구나.
뭔가 저한테 위로를 건네면서 뭔가 그런 느낌.
Maria Maria 빛나는 밤이야 널 괴롭히지 마 Maria 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 뭐하러 아동바동해 이미 여름동네
On its face, Maria is a song about being confident in yourself despite the hateful words of others. That message is definitely there. But according to Hwasa, that's not the whole story.
하고 싶다. 나의 또 다른 자아를 마리아로 표현을 해서 앨범으로 이렇게 구성을 하고 싶다라는 생각이 되게 강력했었어요. 생각보다 풀어내는 게 너무 어려웠었던 것 같아요. 네. 이제 마리아라는 곡을 이제 우여곡절 끝에 이렇게 나왔는데 저는 제가 착하게 열심히 잘 살고 있다고 생각을 하고 살았거든요. 근데 지내다 보니까 되게 막 제가 어느 순간 막 뭔가에 물들어 있고 뭔가 변해가는 느낌이고 그런 마음들이 점점 막 이렇게 막 변질되려고 하는 거예요. 그냥 이렇게 바보같이 살면서 상처받을 바에는 나쁜 년이 될까? 저 혼자서 그런 갈등을 막 외롭게 했던 것 같아요.
According to the narrative structure I grew up with in the West, a great story has a good guy and a bad guy. Looking at the song through this lens, the good guy and the bad guy seem obvious. It's Hwasa versus the world. Hwasa is face to face with her lifelong enemy, the harsh judgments of her society. She defeats the villain by having confidence in herself and staying her course. Nothing's left before our main character to live happily ever after, right? Not right. Because for Hwasa, society is not exactly the villain in this song. It's more complicated than that.
타이틀 마리아라는 곡이고요. 마리아라는 한 선한 아리따운 여성이 선과 악 사이에서 갈등을 하는 그런 곡인데요. 영혼을 갈았죠, 이 노래. 검은 마리아와 빨간 마리아 이 두 인격체의 갭이라고 해야 되나? 검은 마리아는 어떤 아이이고 근데 그 마리아가 죽고서 나쁜 마리아로 다시 태어났는데
In traditional Korean literature, there's a plot structure known as Gi Sung Jong Gyo. As it happens, the more complex message that Hwasa explained for this song seems to fit this plot structure perfectly. In this structure, the story begins with an introduction to the characters and the issues that they'll face. Then comes the rising action. But the goal is not to defeat an enemy. Instead, the goal is self-realization. The climax of this narrative structure is marked by a change in direction, a sort of twist in the story. It's the moment when the main character learns something about themselves that leads them to greater fulfillment and personal growth. Finally, instead of living happily ever after, the story concludes with a sort of review of the lessons learned by the main character. This plot structure is much closer to the narrative flow of Maria, and also of her more recent work, I'm a Bee. Key: the characters are introduced. Good Maria and Evil Maria. The issue being confronted? The society that Good Maria lives within judges her harshly for various reasons. Sung: Good Maria chooses to end her life in order to escape the constant criticism. But Good Maria does not simply die. She is reborn as Evil Maria. Evil Maria is capable of taking in all the hate, but it's only because she is evil herself. Now here comes the twist. Joan. This whole story didn't actually happen, but it was all in Hwasa's mind. The conclusion, Gyo. Comforted by the presence of those who love her, she wonders if it is better to be good-hearted and vulnerable, or if it is better to be resentful and strong.
이제 결말을 어떻게 끝내야 될까라는 고민을 되게 많이 했었거든요. 그냥 이렇게 스토리보드 계속 그냥 막 무식하게 부딪혀가지고 쓰다 보니까 그냥 마지막에는 뭔가 마리아가 다시 리와인드로 이렇게 처음으로 돌아가서 죽을 때의 시점으로 돌아가는데 그때 그냥 내가 혼자 있는 게 아니라 누군가가 내 집을 찾아와주면 그거야말로 그냥 제일 아무렇지 않듯이 행복하게 지나가겠다라는 생각이 들더라고요. 그래서
Maria is not only a song about overcoming your critics, it's also a song about overcoming yourself by pursuing goodness even when evil seems like the smarter choice, even when evil seems right. The new personas known as Good Maria and Evil Maria are tools she uses to highlight this internal conflict. I once said that while Hwasa rules the stage, An Hye-jin rules the pen. Well, if we're going to understand the reasons why she uses these personas, we need to learn a little more about the person behind the persona. On the reality television series I Live Alone, celebrities allow cameras and show hosts into a day in their life. Hwasa has been a permanent cast member since 2018. This means that for the past 5 years, she has shared snippets of her life. I'm actually a huge fan of the show, and I recommend it to anyone who's in the mood for some wholesome and humorous reality television. And after watching a great deal of the segments of various celebrities, I have noticed that people tend to curate their image on the show, but not in a deceitful or fake way. It's just that even though it's a day in their life, most guests tend to show themselves when they're doing something funny, interesting, or admirable. Hwasa's segments tend to stand out because they're really unfiltered.
지금까지 본 모든 출연자분들 중에 제일 리얼했던 것 같아요.
Watching her segments, you really feel like you get a more complete picture of how she lives, who she is, and what she's about. I will not attempt to boil her entire personality down to one thing. She's actually a very interesting person with a very interesting personality.
안녕. 나는 안혜진이라고 해. 그렇게 먹는다고?
But I want to focus on the aspect of her personality that I believe drives the direction of her music.
척척할 때 그냥 자연스럽게 찾게 되는 거죠.
전화에서 사실 적적하다는 단어를 쓰기가 쉽지.
An Hye-jin is an extremely self-reflective, deep thinker, and I would even go as far as to call her a truth seeker. And by that I just mean that she is a person who questions the world. She questions societal standards. She questions cultural norms. And most of all, she questions herself.
최근에 무언가를 더 가지기 위해, 더 높이 올라가기 위해 애써본 경험이 있나요? 뭐랄까, 현재 진행형인 것 같아요. 뭔가를 더 가지려고 하고, 더 높이 올라가기 위해서 아둥바둥하고, 그래서 되게 열심히 애쓰고. 근데 이게 어떻게 보면 장점이기도 한데, 이게 또 자기 자신을 갉아먹는 또 단점이기도 하거든요. 그냥 좀 더 마음 편안하게 모든 걸 놓고 즐길 수 있는 날이 온다면 그 사람은 자기 자신을 뭔가를 이렇게 초월한 그런 경지지 않을까. 누군가 그 순간들을 다 꿈꾸고 있는 것 같아요. 저 또한 꿈을 꾸고 있습니다.
She never seems content with believing that she has it all together, but instead she questions her own actions and motivations.
엄마가 몸이 좀 안 좋다. 근데 제가 신경 쓰일까봐 이제 아프단 말을 하지 말라 그랬다고. 제가 그동안 이제 이 앨범 준비하느라고 많은 분들한테 소홀했어요. 친구들, 가족. 이기적으로 그냥 저는 이 앨범에만 그냥 계속 집중만 하고 막 그런 상태였어요. 그래서 행복하자고 이렇게 이 일을 하는 건데 그러니까 놓치는 것들이 너무 많다 보니
성찰, 자아성찰 같은 걸 좋아하고 안 그래도 변태일 정도로 많이 하는 것 같아요.
할머니 집을 왔습니다. 할머니 집은 정말 나다움을 느끼고 싶을 때 오는 것 같아요. 정말 나를 보고 싶을 때, 나를 잡고 싶을 때, 나다움을 보고 싶을 때. 할머니가 이제 되게 무병장수하시고 이제 나이가 이제 많이 드셔서 이제 돌아가시면서 집이 이제 비었는데 그래서 비었죠. 후회되는 거는 뭐 그거죠. 제가 시간을 많이 못 내고 그래서 결국
할머니 언제? 할머니가 저 이번에 마마무 활동 딱 컴백 전날 이틀 전 그때 이제 돌아가.
작년이요?
네. 그래서 네.
그냥 진짜 도끼 품고 무대를 했던 것 같아요. 그렇게라도 해야 제가 나서 안 풀리고 무대를 하니까 이제 발인을 딱 못 보고 이제 제가 갔죠. 진짜 슬퍼할 시간도 없이 막 이렇게 지나가는 거예요. 그래서 그게 너무 아쉬웠던 것 같아요.
It is this transparency, along with her skill as a songwriter, that allows her to poetically express her inner life. Her song, Be Calm, is a great example of this. The title of the song, in fact, would be more accurately translated as Growing Numb. Thanks to a comment from a kind viewer, I was able to find this awesome Twitter user who wrote a more accurate translation of Be Calm. And the lyrics are even more raw and poetic than I previously thought.
알아차렸나봐 꽃이라도 피워주네 그곳에서 나는 다시 삶의 길을 찾아가네.
Her self-reflective nature often causes her to dwell on her perceived faults and failures, and she's expressed multiple times that she is driven by a desire to be at peace with herself.
원래는 내가 제일 원하는 게 무엇이고 갈망하는 게 무엇인지 했을 때 평화였거든요. 근데 그 평화라는 게 어떤 모양을 하고 있는 평화인지는 모르지만 하여튼
I think these two qualities cause her to really think through her internal conflicts rather than pushing them to the back of her mind as many of us do.
요새는 점점 뭔가 겉에 이렇게 장식들이 더 중요해지고
거칠해?
네, 거칠 애들이. 근데 아니나 다를까 나도 뭔가 거기에 모르게 또 휩쓸려지는 내 자신이 너무 싫고.
When she's confused about what path she should take, what she should do in a given situation, or who she wants to become, she dwells on these thoughts in an attempt to find a resolution, to find peace. We've all struggled with internal conflicts before, but what's fascinating to me is how open she is about these deeply personal things. She is very transparent. Whether it's sharing her life on television, talking in interviews, or writing deeply personal lyrics, An Hye-jin does not hide who she is.
걸크러쉬의 정석이라 불리는데 본인이 생각하는 본인만의 가장 큰 매력은?
사실은 저는 내적으로 이게 또 말하면 좀 오해가 쌓일 수도 있는데 내적으로 그렇게 강한 사람은 아니에요. 그냥 똑같아요. 다른 사람들이랑 다 똑같은데 그 안 속에 있는 그 뭔가의 열정들 그리고 뭔가에 대한 외치고 싶은 나의 뭔가 그런 것들이 몸 안에 막 들끓고 있어요. 감히 제가 이 세상을 막 이렇게 할 수는 없겠지만 다만 나도 조금이라도나마 이 세상에 뭔가의 힘이 됐으면 좋겠다 라는 생각으로 제 자신을 꾸며내려고 한다기보다는 그냥 있는 그대로 좀 막 외치는 것 같아요. 그리고 저는 그 강한 이미지가 너무 좋아요. 강한 이미지가
An Hye-jin seems determined to not hide who she truly is. Yes, she uses personas, but they are not meant to deceive, and they're not meant to cover her true self. But if she's not trying to hide her true self, then why wear a mask? I think the answer lies in one of the functions of art. One way to define art is the act of using the tangible world to represent the intangible world. Artists use the tangible, clay, paint, music, film, and even their own bodies to show us the intangible realities that make our lives meaningful, the things we can't see, like hope, purpose, and love. Art can make the invisible visible. For Hwasa, one could say that much of her work so far has been an attempt to make the invisible world of her mind understandable and visible to both herself and others. Hwasa is a woman of many faces because in most of her projects, she's trying to show us her whole self, contradictions and all. There's a reason we're afraid of our shadow. It's because we're all full of contradictions, but recognizing that, admitting that, can be scary. The longer you live, the more you discover that you don't always agree with yourself. And worse, sometimes, even when you believe something is the wrong thing to do, you want to do it anyway. In 57 AD, the Christian apostle Paul wrote, "The good that I want to do, I don't do it, but the evil I don't want to do, I seem to do it every day." Realizing that you have opposing desires, that one part of you wants to go left while another wants to go right, is a part of the human experience that has been a topic of discussion for centuries. So it should come as no surprise that it's been a topic that many artists have grappled with over the years. In paintings, songs, film, and dance, artists have grappled with the duality we all live with and questioned the best way to live with it. In the story of Maria, we see that the real enemy is herself, or rather her inability to settle the conflict between the opposing parts of herself. Good Maria, who wants to remain kind and optimistic, versus evil Maria, who views resentment and bitterness as strength.
바보같이 살면서 상처받을 바에는 나쁜 년이 될까? 저 혼자서 그런 갈등을 막 외롭게 했던 것 같아요.
This complex inner turmoil is hinted at in the lyrics, but she's able to more fully express it through her use of multiple personas. Hwasa has a strong cinematic vision that can be seen in her directorial contributions to her music videos. She's highly involved in the creation of her videos. For the music videos of both Maria and I'm she determined the storyline, submitted storyboards to the director, and collaborated with him to accomplish her vision. Hwasa is not just a musician, but she's a serious movie buff. Knowing this, I'm confident that the references to the Academy Award-winning Italian film Malena were no accident.
Ma non ce l'andare un travaglio che tempo che lavoro, io non ce l'ho manco per me.
Posso mettere su un fermento?
Malena is a kind and simple woman living in a small town. She's also believed to be an immoral, husband-stealing, promiscuous woman. When she first appears on screen, we can barely see her through the crowd of judgmental townspeople, and we are overcome by the sounds of their constant gossip. This reminds me of the opening scene in the Maria music video. It opens with a wide shot of good Maria laying dead in a pool of her own blood. This image alone is striking, but its meaning is enhanced by the fact that you can barely see her through the crowd of paparazzi that clamor to take pictures of her body. It's disturbing, but also captivating. Which is actually the perfect phrase to describe the film Malena. Why does this entire town believe that Malena is a bad person? Because she's beautiful and full-figured. That's really all there is to it. The viewer soon discovers that all of the rumors against her are false, and she's been targeted simply because of her appearance.
살아있을 때 저는 생각하는 거는 그냥 말이 뭔가 그냥 제가 착한 마리아가 뭐 검은 머리 이렇게 참한 건 아니다. 이렇게 막 걸어 다녀요. 마을이나 걸어 다니면은 하나같이 사람들이 이런 그림이 생각이 나고 좀 그런 것들이 제일 크지 않아요. 저도 일상에 있어서 뭐 오히려 일이 힘들면 그거는 참으면 되는 건데 말이 이상하게 계속 이상해지고 하면 정신 이상해지잖아요.
착한 말이 할 때는 숨어서 숨을 쉬고 나쁜 말이 할 때는 사람들이 무서워하고
After being tried in court for false accusations of adultery and even being assaulted by her lawyer, Malena tries to take back some control of her life by giving up on goodness and becoming exactly the sort of woman they all assumed she was. She dyes her hair red and pays the bills by becoming an escort for literal Nazis. She walks with more confidence now, and the people no longer talk about her openly in the streets. But on the inside, Malena has lost herself. In fact, she's starting to hate herself. If you plan on watching this film, let me warn you, it gets very dark. Once Malena starts hanging out with Nazis, the women in town finally have a way to justify their hatred of her. And one day, they act on that hate by brutally beating her in the middle of town. The scene is violent and chaotic. Malena is brutalized by an entire town. After being beaten nearly to death, she leaves the town in complete and utter shame. She boards a train and heads back to her hometown. But that's not how the film ends. In the end, Malena returns to the same small town, to the same people who harassed and attacked her before. Malena seems docile and guarded. The women at the market don't exactly know how to respond. Does she want revenge? Will she curse them? No, she doesn't. What Malena did left me shocked and confused. I struggled to understand the message being conveyed through this ending. Is it a happy ending because Milena chose not to hold anger and bitterness in her heart, even though she had every right to? Was it a sad ending because she is a shell of her former self? I think the answer is both. I like how the folks at Blimey explained the ending. They stopped mocking Milena, so she found peace, but she lost herself. The ending does not resolve the issue, but it raises a question. In the Maria music video, the act of ending her own life has both a literal and symbolic meaning. Because losing who you truly are, sacrificing your goodness in order to survive in a cruel world, is its own kind of death, its own form of evil.
Nobody else. No one's gonna help you. Nobody else. No one's gonna love you. Nobody else. Falling like a shooting star. There's no one at night. People tell me to be mine.
Somewhere in the midst of this world we live in, there is another world, the world of the mind. There are 2 other songs on the album that seem to be directly connected to Maria. Like the foreword and epilogue of a book, I think these 2 songs are essential to fully understanding the message being conveyed. Although there are critics and haters, Hwasa's battle is not with those people. They are not the enemy. Her battle is within. The final song on the Maria album is called LMM, an acronym for Losing My Mind. I view it as the true resolution to Maria, like an epilogue to the story. Lyrically, it is a far more straightforward look at Hwasa's internal battle as she wonders whether this path she's chosen is truly the right one, since it has brought her both success and suffering. And visually, in this video, I believe she reveals a valuable lesson. LMM features some truly beautiful cinematography. As Hwasa moves through the sprawling landscape, she is constantly threatened by the arrows speeding through the air. The tension is high as arrows barely miss her body, but they don't hit her until this pivotal scene, where Hwasa herself shoots the arrow. Only then does it strike her. Only the arrows she shoots at herself can harm her. The guys at DKDK TV did a wonderful analysis of the lyrics and music video that I highly suggest you watch. They said that this scene likely represents Hwasa's realization that her battle is not with what others say about her, but with what she believes about herself. I agree, and if you look at this song as an epilogue to Maria, as I do, then this interpretation makes perfect sense. Once again, the outside world is not the villain she needs to defeat. Instead, her battle must be fought and won within. Hwasa says that she wrote Maria with the belief that she was not the only person with a shadow. She was not the only Maria out there. All of us have our own lonely battles to fight, our own choices to make. Whether to live in bitterness or pursue peace, whether to lose ourselves in darkness or move toward the light, whether to live or die. We are each the main character in the story of our own lives, not because we are more important than the people around us, but because only we can choose the outcome of our story. Despite the pressures around you, Only you can fight the battles that take place in your mind. This is exactly the concept that is explored at an even deeper level in her next project and the subject of the next and final episode of this series, Guilty Pleasure. A project that encapsulates perhaps her toughest mental battle yet when she comes face to face with her shadow. As we approach the end of this video, I'd like to share a personal reflection. I know that for many fans, the confident persona of Hwasa is an image of strength, but strength comes in many forms. I would like to acknowledge the strength that it takes to be transparent and vulnerable, to unashamedly share your journey toward peace, even if you haven't found it yet. Hwasa's ability to use film and song to tell complex, personal stories inspires me as an artist. But her choice to be unashamed of her internal struggles inspires me as a person who has often felt ashamed of sharing my own.
어떻게 보면은 조금 애절하고 처절하기도 하고 처연하기도 하고 그러면서도 마음의 안정을 얻고 이런 거를 표현을 하고 싶었어요. 마지막쯤에 제가 항상 저희 눈물 쥐레가 있어요. 근데 그 부분이 떨어지는 비에도 꽃은 피어나니까 하면서 나오는 스트링이거든요. 그것만 들으면 눈물이 그렇게 나더라고요. 되게 막 이렇게 슬펐다가 그 스트링이 딱 들어오는 순간부터 세상이 너무 아름다워지고 막 이렇더라고요. 그래서 그 부분에서 뭔가 내 마음이 안정을 찾고 편안해지는 기분이 항상 들었어서 마지막을 그렇게 마무리를 하고 싶었어요. 슬프지만 좋다, 뭐 이런. 네. 일단 저의 얘기를 쓴 거다 보니까 이런 마음으로 이렇게 썼어요. 뭔가 사람들과 다 같이 있을 때 어두운 면을 꺼려 하잖아요. 예를 들어서 저도 뭔가를 할 때 어두운 면을 많이 보이게 되면은 좀 이제 많은 사람들이 이렇게 좀 하잖아요. 근데 사실 그런 어두운 면들도 사랑해줘야 되거든요. 그리고 저는 그런 것들을 이 앨범에 정말 아주 열심히 유쾌하게 담아냈고, 그래서 여러분들도 그런 슬픔들, 외로움들, 불안함들 피하려고만 하지 마시고, 그리고 눈치 보지 마시고 이 노래 들으시면서 마음껏 푸시고 위로받고 희망을 얻으셨으면 좋겠어요. 네. 여러분들 유익한 시간이었나요? 학습지 선생님 같다. 유익한 시간이었습니까? 아주 좋은 시간이 되셨으면 좋겠습니다. 지금까지 화사였습니다. 안녕.